2 and 3, take 14. Shut down 9.
No, I can't believe it's 25 years at all since Jerry's gone. It still seems like yesterday, and yet it's been a lonely 25 years. I hope he's having a good time wherever he is. I'll tell him off when I get there. I met him in Las Vegas. I was working with Cesar Romero at the Dunes Hotel, and Jerry was hired to do the music for this sort of Latin review that was playing the Dunes, which is no longer there. We met there, and we were really friends, great friends. We became really marvelous friends. We both hated the same thing and liked the same things. He was somebody that was fun to be with. And I was a dancer, so, I knew Hollywood musicals and other dancers and Hollywood, and Jerry was an intellectual. What he was doing in show business, I had no idea, except that he was, obviously a fantastic music writer.
My father's mother never knew what her son did, and my mother used to joke all the time about that with him. She'd say, "Jerry, do you understand that your mother doesn't even know what it is that you do?" I found that funny, that my grandmother didn't know what my father did. My father wrote music, and I certainly didn't understand, dare I say, appreciate truly what it was that he did as a child, because, you're playing with your dolls, or you want to go outside, and I had to be quiet all the time, because Dad was working, and the memories of those things are, very dear. But I would hear the music all the time through the night, and wake up to it sometimes.
2M4, take 12.
He worked a lot. He just couldn't work in this town. He couldn't work television or, films. He did a lot of acts that played Las Vegas, like Debbie Reynolds and Mitzi Gaynor, and, dancers and singers. He was Eddie Fisher, flying back and forth all the time. He did that. He did albums recorded with singers, nightclub reviews. He did one in Florida. So he was a busy man, but nobody knew who he was, including myself. Then it was Betty Hutton and Otto Preminger that broke the blacklist for Jerry. She was doing a series, and she was a wonderful woman because she made him part of her. She wanted to use him musically, and he was turned down by the sponsors, and she said, you don't get him, you don't get me if you don't take him. So she really was fabulous that way.
4M3, take 77.
And he came back from the meeting and said, I said, well, and he said, I don't know. He said, there's this crazy man. I like him. And I didn't know Sam Peckinpah from a hole in the wall. To make a long story short, it wasn't long after that Sam came here to the house. And in walks this incredibly charming man, Sam in his charming glory at that point. I mean, he was just adorable. And we had this really friendly, warm, fuzzy evening all here together, a few drinks and some hors d'oeuvres, and couldn't have been nicer. And off he went. And I thought, boy, this is great. You've got this fabulous job with this fabulous director. This is going to be fun. Oh, God. And the next time I saw him was on the scoring stage, and Jerry had used some wind chimes in the score. And I'm sitting in a chair next to Sam, and Sam said, what is that noise? Because Sam is not a wind chime kind of guy. Jerry said, they're wind chimes. He said, well, I don't think I like them. He said, it doesn't matter what you like. He said, it's what you get that counts. Sam was doing Cable Hogue in Arizona. And they had as a, they used to watch their dailies in a laundromat. You can imagine how good that was. And then they would send the stuff down that was being recorded for Wild Bunch, and he would run that after his dailies in this laundromat. So he had this sort of pipsqueak notion about what the music was, because he was listening to it through a speaker this big in a laundromat, you know, with images on the wall, and he was beside himself. And he wrote this long memo to Jerry, screaming about the violins. So Jerry said, what do I do? He said, what is he listening to down there? And I said, well, if it were me, I'd go down and kick his ass. So that's exactly what Jerry did. He flew down that night to Arizona, went to the laundromat, and demanded a theater rental so that he could see it, you know, properly. And that worked. I think they would have taken breaks from each other from time to time, because you can't be that close to somebody. I don't, especially as volatile as Sam could be, and as logical as my husband was. I mean, the two of them, those two perspectives. Sam doesn't think that way. Anything logical was off limits to him. But and once in a while, you got to step back from that. Because there were times when Sam would misbehave and Jerry would just go downstairs and he says, don't let that man down here. I don't want to see him tonight.
Sam and I both sort of pretty much moved into the library.
Yes, you did.
Sometimes together and sometimes on our own, but that library in there became sort of Shea Peckinpah, pretty much. And
It was the Peckinpah wing.
Yeah, many interesting and volcanic situations happened here under the auspices of Jerry, who would look at it with benign amusement, and Camille would sort of supervise, but Jerry was always very amused by the shenanigans that were going on, many times including me, many times not including me. So it was actually a time to remember when you look back on it. This whole house holds a lot of very dear and very emotional and very, you know, important times, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Especially, there was such good moments here at that time with Sam and his kids.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was about him when he was in this house, because of my own children, perhaps. He was cozy and warm and fuzzy, which is not like Sam. But I mean, there was Matthew was here, and Sharon was here, and Melissa, and you know, they all showed up. We'd have ice cream, and they'd all be in the pool, and we'd have barbecue, and you know, it was just fabulous.
Sam he took the life I had, which was, you know, all fine and perfect, and he just took it upside down and shook it around, but he'd always put it back the other way. When Sam was here, it was just you couldn't predict anything. It was sky was the limit. I know it sounds strange. He really had a lot to do with shaping my image of myself as a woman, because he made me feel things in certain ways and brought in and helped me to grow as, you know, as a young girl. You're going through these impressionable years, and he trusted me, and my father trusted me, and they gave me opportunities to do things that other parents might not do because they think we're too young. My mom and dad would come home and it's, you know, midnight and we're up playing poker with Sam on the bed, and he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it, they're fine," you know. And my dad was like, "Oh, it's a school night," you know.
He had a trailer in Malibu where he lived in.
Paradise Cove, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
he lived in a trailer park. He had a house in Malibu, and then he gave that up.
And he had the condo in Studio City.
Condo in Studio City, that was Junior Bonner, but prior to that, he was basically after that he was in a trailer, but he spent a lot of time here.
He was a gypsy.
Yeah, he was very much
He really
a gypsy.
was a gypsy.
Yeah.
We used to pick him up at the airport. He'd come back from Europe, you know.
Yeah.
He says, "I want to go home." He'd come here.
Shea Fielding was definitely his home away from home. And he deeply, deeply respected Jerry. Jerry was one of the few people he didn't lay his bullshit on. Jerry, he wouldn't do it to Jerry. He respected him far too much. Although they had their punch-ups, he once threw it. Was it Jerry threw a chair at Sam or vice versa?
No, Jerry threw the chair at Sam
Yeah.
in the screening room at Warner's. I could never say that Sam mellowed out, can you?
It didn't change, it just got worse.
Yeah, there you go. It didn't mellow out.
Yeah.
They were both angry, what you call the angry young man. That was always part of it, which was interesting for me, because maybe it's because Jerry didn't smile a lot, that they thought he was mad all the time.
But when he did smile, it was magic.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't often, but
Yeah.
but he enjoyed things that he just wasn't visible where he was concerned.
He was the most knowledgeable man I've ever met in my life. And I once said to him, I said, "You're always downstairs working. I never see you read a newspaper. How come you are so au fait with what's going on in the world all the time?" He said, "I have to go to the bathroom sometimes."
There you go.
There must have been a pile of newspapers in his bathroom.
When he did Wild Bunch, he was hooked. You know, as much as he said that Sam was the kind of an unusual filmmaker that just nobody was like that at that point. What he saw, said he has the most magnificent vision as a director that for Jerry. He said, I just can't believe what's in his mind. His vision is unbelievable. His passion for his work, all of those things, and then there was, the other little person that you knew, those that were close enough to him, that
That
knew
he allowed to be close.
that he allowed, his kids, he allowed his kids in, and he was just a different human being during those moments, and yet when he was working, he was Mr. Fielding, who lived in my house and ate at my table, and I heard him scream unmercifully at, a violinist or a cello player or a horn player or a drummer that missed something.
All right, then pay attention to me, will you? Dominic, please pay attention to me because Larry, shh, wait, let me give you a clue. Hold it, please. Jesus. Do you have an do you know where the other drums all quit, where it says stop clicks, Larry? Do you have that indicated anywhere? Stop clicks? Yeah. No. You don't? No. Look at measure 58. You have a measure 58?
But when that hour was over and the next break came, he always went to explain himself. He never wanted to hurt anybody's feelings. It was just a matter of delivering, what he knew you could do. And they loved him for that.
I saw him be forceful in so many other ways, being at the studio, and him, was very, strong about his craft and what he did and getting his point across, and he'd shake it out of them and get it to happen. But with me, he was so much the opposite, really. Like, if he really needed me to understand something, it's almost like he would speak to me more passively and gently, and he would make his points that way. But I think because he knew that I saw him that way with other people, and he had to be very different with me.
When the world opened up to him again after the blacklist, I guess it's a bit like, a starving human being. You haven't eaten in a while. You don't know when to stop when the food is set before you. And I think he overdid the work. There's no doubt about the stress in this business. Everybody has it. But when you try to do, 8 things at once, there's no time for sleep. And that was his undoing.
Dub down 10.
We were not on location at all on that one. So the fact that Sam was doing this movie and Sam said, Jerry, you're going to do it. So he was looking forward to this project. And so all of that it was a very easy project to do. there was no problem with Sam. Sam wasn't, ranting and raving and telling him how to write the music. It was just done. And we went to see the first screening without the music, and I went with him, and I loved the movie. It was just, it was just fun. It was marvelous. It was really a great romp, I thought, and he loved it too, and he really couldn't wait to go to work on it. So it was a job that he really enjoyed, and he was looking to the a pleasant aftermath, no problems, and he enjoyed the movie completely, and we'd all gotten to know Steve and Allie, and it's marvelous relationships all the way around. Project over.
Posters out, Jerry's
Yeah.
name on it.
Yeah, so there you go, and I got my telephone rang one day before the picture was released, and it was Steve McQueen on the phone. And I can't even remember the words because I was so dumbfounded by the message that he was replacing Jerry's score with music by Quincy Jones. And he kind of just sort of talked along, I guess, validating what he had just said. And I said, oh my God, And he said, well, so do you want to tell Jerry? I said, no, I do not want to tell Jerry. I do not want to break his heart. If anybody's going to do that, honey, it's going to be you. So I hung up, and about 20 minutes later, Jerry came upstairs. He said, guess what? And I said, I already know. He was crushed, just crushed. He called Sam. Sam was, commiserated with him and said it wasn't his fault and he didn't know what to do about it. Sam took out ads in the trades, saying that it was, he was no part of the choice and one thing or another, which helped boost Jerry's morale a little bit, but it broke his heart, really did. And never wanted to see that movie. It was just a chapter closed, and it's a really difficult one for that down. I guess it's happened to a lot more people than just him, but as far as I know, the first and only time that it happened to him. But boy, he was called by several producers that had done the same thing, that their composers had said that they didn't want the music. Would he write a score for it? But Jerry refused to do that because he knew how that felt. He said, no, I can't. Call somebody else.
I was sort of out of the loop at that point, and I don't think it wasn't anything to do with Sam. It was Steve's decision, and I know Sam was pretty upset about it because of his loyalty to Jerry, and actually he loved that score.
He did.
He loved that score. But there is an amusing addendum to that story. During that time, Steve and Allie had given Camille and Jerry's kids, Elizabeth and Claudia, 2 kittens. And the next time that Jerry actually saw Steve was when we celebrated Sam's 50th birthday here at the house, and Steve and Allie showed up, which Jerry was not too happy about. And Steve went to Elizabeth and Claudia and said, how are my cats? And they said, just fine. And he said, what are they called? And Elizabeth went, Allie and Gringo. And Steve said, Gringo. And apparently Jerry had said to Claudia and Elizabeth, nothing in this house, whether animal or human, is called Steve.
Actually, it was a fabulous party.
It was. Sam, for the first time in his life, did not touch a drink. He was so shocked and so stunned at the people that were there. Everybody who had ever worked with him in his life was at that party.
Yeah.
Those that couldn't make it sent telegrams. And the classic was Elizabeth and Claudia were inside the window, and they were doing the announcing. They said, and he arrived with his brother, who was a Superior Court judge.
In the state of California.
Yeah. And Elizabeth and Claudia said, they just pulled up in the driveway. They're getting out of the car. They're walking towards the house. No, they've gone back to the bushes. They are peeing in the bushes. The entire building was up at the window watching Sam and his Superior Court judge, Denver Peckinpah,
Have a pee in
having
my...
a pee in the garden before they came in.
Yeah.
Harry Nielsen was here. Ringo Starr was here. Keith Moon was here. I mean, Joan Blondell was here. I mean,
James Caan.
James Caan, Bobby Duvall. I mean, it was the most star-studded event you've ever seen in your life. It was
And such
unbelievable.
fun.
5M4, take 74. Dub down 31.
Jerry had gone to Canada. The girls and I had taken him to the airport, and feeling fine. And he was to be in Toronto for a week, and then he was going to New York to do some press stuff that he needed to do, and then come home. And it was one of the trips that I didn't take with him, because the kids were at school and transportation, so I didn't go. So this friend of mine, this director who lived very close to us, had invited the girls and I down to have dinner. I guess it was on a Sunday. And I said we'd be down about 5 or 6 o'clock. And in they walked about 3 o'clock, 3:30 into my house. We were going to their house. And they came in and said they had, I said, we were just going to get ready to come down. And it was, no, he said, I have some news for you. And I said, what? And he said, Jerry's gone. And I said, I know, I know that. He's flying from, I spoke with him last night. He was in Toronto, and he was going to call me from New York. He says, no, I mean, he's gone. I said, I know he's gone. I couldn't, there was no way I could, get death out of that sentence. And that was the way I found out. I was just, stunned. And it was on the news that night, but they needed to tell me about it before I heard it somewhere else. And that was it. He had gone to sleep the night before, and he had a radio interview before he left for the airport in Toronto. And they came to pick him up in the car in the morning, and they didn't get any answer from his room, and he'd gone to bed and decided to take a walk. She didn't leave my side. I could have never gotten through this event without her and my mother. My mother went home before you did. And my kids, how I ever got them back to school, I don't know. And I went through a period there, about 2 or 3 years, I don't remember much of it at all. And I have a pretty good memory, but that just was such a fog.
My memories of my father stopped at a very instrumental time in my life. I would like to have known him as an adult. I was frightened because I didn't know how I was going to get through the rest of my life without this man. And I knew I needed to grow up very quickly. And I knew that I needed to make him proud of me. So I think I gathered a lot of strength from him on a spiritual level as soon as he was gone, because I needed to help my mom. And it wasn't about me at that moment. It was about him, and it was about her, and it was about assisting her through that process. I see a lot of my dad in Claudia, my sister, and I learn a lot about my dad obviously through my mom, because she adopted much of his spirit as well. She became a combination of both my father and my mother. She was never completely wholly herself again. She became half him.
To this day, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. They're just incredible. He left him some really great kids.
I think we all felt, Jerry was always downstairs, and when Jerry left, part of Camille went downstairs too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he died the year he won the Emmy. But to be nominated, 3 times from the Academy, and the most amusing one was the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And he thought that was a joke. He said there can't possibly be a place that's called the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And with the letter that came with his, making him aware of the fact that he had, gotten this award, was a list of previous recipients. And Elmer Bernstein was on that list. So he called Elmer and he said, "Tell me that this is a joke." He said, "No, there really is a place." And we flew down to Oklahoma City and he got his Cowboy Hall of Fame award. And
The thing about Jerry and Sam was that they both had in common was genius. It manifested itself in very different ways, and I think that was the common denominator. But although they were very different, what they had in common between them was passion and genius. And passion and genius has to connect somehow. And both had a sense of humor about it at the same time. So, I mean, I look back on those times when Sam and Jerry were in their prime, and it was an honor to be around both of them. And I miss them both very much.
5 and 5, slide 6 and 1, take 42.
Where have you been? I've been, why did you leave? I have so much to tell him. How proud I am, first of all, to be a part of who he is. And that I'm so sorry for having woken you up from your naps, because I know how precious they are. That was a big thing. I'm sorry for having disturbed, his creative process so many times, because I was a kid.
I would be ecstatic. I would like to just have an hour with him, if he could give me an hour somewhere to connect again, and oh my God, I would just be really thrilled out of my bird on that one. I think the kids would too. Girls would love to see him. It was, when someone goes like that, you never get to say goodbye.
I know.
You don't get to say, "God, I love you," just one more time.
He left at a time when his family was happy, and when he had done what he was supposed to, I guess, have done, and he's hopefully gone on to write bigger and better things, for people who, needed to hear it. So I think it's okay,
Now 32 years has gone by,
Yes.
but his music is back in the Getaway on the DVD.
I think that's fabulous. I don't know how you managed to do that.
What do you think Jerry would think about his music going back in the film?
Well, if you did the work, and if there is any such place as, another plane that we move on to, you can bet he's been looking over your shoulder the whole time, just in case.
I know that I do a great deal of complaining, but I think complaining is a positive gesture. If one doesn't complain, you're never going to serve notice that you've got a stomach ache. I believe in complaining. I think that unless you make noises about what is wrong, it never gets fixed. On the contrary, it compounds and becomes a plague. I feel that very strongly.